Healthy relationships aren't built on more effort, they're built on more rest. Since 1990, the number of adults who have 3 or fewer close friends has doubled, and we are feeling it. For years, I thought that the key to being a good friend meant always showing up, always giving my all, always working to be the best friend that I could be. But I'm finding that the statistics and my experience tell a different story. It seems that we're trying really hard in our relationships, and yet we're still coming up empty a lot of the time. Back in 2014, statistics found that the average American adult was spending 6.5 hours with friends per week. Cut to 2021, and that number has been cut in half to less than 3 hours. The kicker is that time has not been going anywhere else relationally. We're not spending more time with family or more time with significant others. We're really just spending more time alone. So it's not that life is getting more busy, it's just that the ways that we're trying to connect aren't working anymore. I've found that when I build my relationships on rest through rhythms and reciprocity, they end up being much more meaningful and more sustainable. So that's what I want to get into today. I have this theory that the reason that many of us look back on our childhood and remember it as a really relationally charged, exciting time is because the structure of our relationships was provided for us. Namely, almost all of our friendships, for many of us, came from school. And if you were somebody who was in sports or the arts or went to church or some other kind of after-school activity, you had even more structure, which provided you with even more friends. Now that we're adults, we more than likely find that that structure is no longer there, and we have to create that structure for ourselves. I found that for a lot of adults, we tend to really wish that we could go back and have the kinds of friendships that we used to have. We want our friendships now to feel like they did back when we were kids. But unfortunately, that day is never coming. And so if we want meaningful relationships, we're probably going to have to put the structure in place for ourselves so that our relationships take on the more sustainable, more fun, more free-flowing approach that they had back in the day. For some of us, it might be that we find that structure and that free-flowing relational current by committing to going to the same places over and over, whether it's the same coffee shop or committing to going to the same gym or going to a certain church or something like that, and really trying to invest in the relationships that come out of those places. However, I found that even when I do that, I still feel like I'm constantly on a treadmill relationally. And the only way that I have figured out to get off of that treadmill is to set up regular rhythms of relationships with the people in my life who matter most to me. When it comes to these relational rhythms, I found a few things to be really helpful. Number one, ensuring that whatever rhythm we set up is something that we know we can commit to, even when life gets really busy, as it so often does in adulthood, whether that's once a quarter or once a month or once a week. I have many friends that I try and make sure that I set up some kind of consistent, regular, recurring pattern to get time with them, even if that just means a phone call, especially for those who live out of town. I find that when I set these regular patterns, it takes a lot of the effort out of making plans and remembering to touch base, and I just know that I'm going to show up at a certain time and in a certain place. I find that kind of committing to a certain activity, at least for a season, whether that's a weekly dinner or a monthly coffee date or a quarterly movie night, any of those regularly scheduled, pre-planned ways of interacting with my friends, again, helps take a lot of the effort out of navigating how we're going to get time together. But the most important part of this whole process when it comes to relational rhythms is I just have to be the kind of person that shows up. Even on the days when I'm tired, even on the days when it's been a tough day at work, even on the days when I really would just rather go home and have a night to myself, I try to be the person who shows up no matter what, knowing that my friends are the kind of people who want me to show up no matter what. And that, too, is what adds to this feeling of rest within my relationships, because I know that no matter who I am or how I am, my friends are people I can count on to support me regardless. One thing that I think is important to note about these kind of relational rhythms is that they do come at a cost. And that cost is simply commitment, something that a lot of us have a really hard time with. If you're going to commit to relational rhythms with people, you have to accept that there are going to be shiny opportunities, fun experiences that you may have to say no to so that you can be the kind of friend who continues to show up for your people. I have found that most of the time these shiny new opportunities don't end up being as shiny as I thought they were, and the deep meaning that I'm looking for is actually found in the regular, consistent, sustainable patterns that I've made with my closest friends. Another way that I like to work rest into my relationships is actually the place where I've had to work the hardest, and that is with reciprocity. Like I said earlier, I used to think that being a good friend meant showing up all the time and always giving 100% and always being the reliable person. And I still value being that kind of friend. However, at times, what that turned into was relationships and friendships where I was doing most of the work. And I found that just left me feeling really drained and really exhausted a lot of the time, and not really feeling fulfilled in the relationships that I was investing so much in. And so one thing I've been working on in recent years is something called reciprocity, which basically just means relationships in which there's give and take. Not all relationships have to be this way. For instance, I don't expect a lot of reciprocity from my barista. They are there to give me coffee, and I am there to give them money in return. And I like it when my baristas are kind, and I try to be kind to them because they work really hard to serve our community really good coffee. But when it comes to friendships, I've tried to kind of set a new standard for myself and just expect that the friendships that I want to invest in, that I want to put my energy and my effort into, are going to be ones where it feels kind of like playing tennis or playing catch with a ball, where I throw and they throw it back, and I throw and they throw it back. In those relationships, I'm finding that my energy is poured out and it's poured back into me, and it's poured out and it's poured back into me. And there's this recurring cycle that allows me to stay relationally nourished and also relationally invested at the same time. At first, I found this to be really scary, if I'm honest, because I wasn't sure if I waited on the ball, metaphorically speaking, to come back to me, if it would every time. And to be honest, there were times that it didn't. And it was really lonely and really sad, really scary, even really frustrating at times. But over time, the more that I've practiced this art, I would say, of reciprocity relationally, the more I've found that I can more quickly identify the kinds of relationships where we're on the same page, where we're wanting to be about the same things. And so I'm able to invest more thoroughly into those. There are two disclaimers for the idea of reciprocity. One is that we do have to be sensitive to the seasons of life that people are in. For instance, I just finished grad school a couple weeks ago, and for the past 2 years, my time has been very limited. And with the people I'm closest to, I try to be really clear in my communication with them on the front end. I tried to let them know that their relationship mattered to me and that I really wanted to stay connected over time, but that it might look differently. And some friendships were able to weather that and others were not. And that's okay. Similarly, I have friends who just had a baby a couple months ago, and the nature of our relationship has changed in recent months. I've done a lot of taking care of their older boys for them, and they've done things like helping me move this month. And so it may not be late night chats and going out and getting drinks like it was a year or a couple months ago, but the relationship is still intact. It has just become flexible, and the reciprocity is still there. And these are people that I'm invested in and they're invested in me, but that investment is just looking a little bit different. The other thing to know, and this is a little bit more nuanced and something I'm honestly still figuring out, is that not all give and take looks the same. You might be like me, and you might be the type that is really passionate about initiating relationally. And you might find that you're really interested in being friends with somebody who's just not really a good initiator for whatever reason. And you, and like I, have to decide, is what the person brings to my life and what I bring to their life and what we find when we're together worth me doing most of the initiating and them investing in me in some other way? And there's, any number of other examples that kind of fall into that, but really there's no formula. In these relationships, I'm finding that it's really important for me to just practice some self-awareness. Is this a relationship where I'm feeling drained? Or is this a relationship that even though I may be investing in one way and they're investing in a totally different way, it still is a relationship that feels encouraging and supporting and like we're moving in the same direction together? And so sometimes I've found too that it can be helpful to just have a conversation about these things with the people that you're close to. I have found that for me, I expect a little bit more of the tennis game early on in relationships, because that just helps me kind of get an expectation of and an understanding of how people operate, because everyone navigates relationships a little bit differently. But as these relationships kind of get established, you kind of learn, oh, that person hits the ball that way, this person hits the ball this way, and I can adjust there, or I don't know that I can adjust to that. And so I make those changes on the fly or over time. And if it feels like the relationship is in a place where trust has been built, then sometimes I'll broach those conversations with people and say, hey, like this really matters to me, but I'm not sure that this particular thing is working. Can we talk about it? And I've been really encouraged to see how those conversations play out. All of this to say, our relationships should be a net positive in our life. When we find ourselves giving and giving and giving and working and working and working and feeling like we're constantly having to try really hard just to keep relationships going, that's not a sustainable way to go about them, whether they're friendships or family or romantic relationships. It's really important that we pay attention to the way that our relationships are affecting us and the way that we are responding in turn. I have found that these rhythms of relationships and the reciprocity in relationships is one way that really helps me keep that rest in check. So, with all of that said, that is the end of my first series here on YouTube on rest. I hope that the past couple of months with me rambling about rest has at least sparked some thoughts about maybe some ways that your life could work a little more rest in. In the coming weeks, I have a lot going on. I am currently in the middle of a move, which is why my apartment is a little bit crazy in the background. And I, like I said, just finished grad school. I'm also getting ready to start a new career and move into a new office. I'm attending 2 weddings in the next month. I'm going out of town twice. And then in a month from now, I go to Europe for over 2 weeks. So I've got a lot coming up, but I also have a lot of ideas that I want to bring to YouTube in the coming weeks and months as well. So be on the lookout for those so that you don't miss them. If you would not mind subscribing, that would be really awesome. Like this video if something in here was interesting, and throw me a comment on what rest looks like for you in relationships. Until next time, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.